Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mr. and Mrs. Social Studies. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jake.
And today we have an ancient Greece video sharing how to teach ancient Greece and what we have done in our classrooms. I know my time with ancient Greece began as a student teacher, and you've been teaching ancient Greece now for 7 years.
This will be year 7, yeah.
So
been a while.
We've got lots of activities. I'm not gonna lie, it's one of my favorite ones. There's a lot of fun stuff to do with a Greece unit, so I think you'll find that to be true as well. Do you want to kick things off?
Yeah, why not? So the first thing, you guys know this by now if you've been with us, you've seen our previous videos, we are really big on vocabulary, and especially with ancient civilizations, world history, there is a lot of it. So we've got several different vocab activities. We've got our word wall, we've got different kinds of fill in the blank, matching, Freyer model, vocab bingo, related word. There's all kinds of different stuff in there. So,
and the great thing about these vocab activities is that they are digital with Google Drive, and it's just so easy to be able to, if you've got 10 minutes, you need to do something with your students, throw in a vocab activity. The whole idea is that there's 8 different vocab activities, so your students can practice these words multiple times. It's not just, hey guys, day 1, vocab activities, and then we never return to it. Not quite. We do return to it multiple points during the lesson, which helps it stick and the students do better with it.
Yeah, just pepper it in there throughout the unit.
Absolutely. And then after you have done some vocabulary, we also like to start with some geography. And we always mix it up with the types of activities we do for geography, but Greece's geography is a little bit interesting and a little different than some of the previous civilizations.
The joke I always make with my students, well, every unit, where do they live? They live by a river. Why is the river important? Because it floods the soil and grows crops, which is obviously, really, really important. But Greece is a little different because it's not river-based. Their geography is a little bit different in that you've got Greece being on a peninsula surrounded entirely by water. You've got it being in a overall very mountainous area, mountainous region. Also, if you're starting with some of the early river valley civilizations, which we have linked below, right? Greece is like your first where you're starting to go into the European continent and checking out some of what was going on over there in world history. So there's a lot of differences of what's going on. So for the geography activity, what we do is it's a 3-pronged approach. The first one is that, again, kind of going off of vocab building also too a little bit. There's a graphic
some inquiry.
Yeah, you need some inquiry. There's a graphic organizer where you are given the list of different geography terms related to Greece, city-states, mountains, bodies of water, all of that good stuff, and they have to search it up on their own, either with on the internet using Google, or if you're using the textbook approach, and then they sort everything in that way to kind of be able to build connections between different geography terms. And then we go into actually putting it on the map. Where do you label all of these at? Where are they actually located in relationship to one another?
Which is on a Google slideshow. They can drag the pieces where they belong.
And then finally, the third slide on there, if you will, there is an essential question where they have to look at how all this geography relates to the development of civilization. So how did Greece being essentially a lot of their city-states, like Athens, for example, being coastal, how does that impact their growth of their civilization? And you might talk about, well, it's because they formed a large navy in order to protect the area that they were at, or they became a big-time trading civilization and expanded out to other areas. And obviously more than just that, but multiple different directions you can go with, seeing that city-states, cultures develop differently because they're surrounded by mountains. Athens and Sparta is a classic case, and we'll get into that in a little bit later.
Absolutely. And as you're just covering, different topics or still introducing Greece, one really cool video. We haven't had a chance to watch the full thing recently, but we just discovered that History Channel's Engineering and Empire series is available in full on YouTube, which is awesome. Sometimes people upload random versions of things that aren't legit, or just the quality's not there, but we are very pleased to see that you can find Greece's there, and it's 45 minutes, so that could definitely work if you have a low-key Friday, or you just want to introduce it. I know something we talk about is, what do you do the day after a test when it falls on a Friday? It's like an awkward day, but you could, if you find yourself in that situation, consider showing one of these Engineering an Empire videos, and they are packed with good stuff and I think helpful visuals for students, not just like animations, but it's like real life, some reenactment sort of things. I think it's pretty cool.
Also, always an easy subplan. Put in a video.
That's true, yes.
It's the benefit of being a history teacher.
Yep. Use your sick
there.
days. Take mental health days if you need. That's a side note, but anyway, let's get in then. We're also still kind of getting this unit started. The Minoans and Mycenaeans are probably one of the first historical topics that you're going to bring up. And with the Minoans and Mycenaeans, I find that an inquiry approach is great. And we do love using inquiry when possible, but in this particular assignment, students are going to examine different photographs from both the Minoans and Mycenaeans and different artifacts and remaining architecture. And they're going to make some predictions based upon what they see in the images. After students have had a chance to go through and make predictions in these photographs, then they can share them out in the class and discuss them, and you can share on the resource itself. It's already got kind of a typed up significance. What do these images mean? What can we infer about these people from this particular image? And I find it's a way not only to get students having to come up with answers for themselves. They're not just waiting to hear the answer from you, but they are making these predictions and taking charge of their learning themselves, but then also connecting visuals that they see with these early peoples of Greece.
So kind of building off of that, we typically would go into examining government, and Greece is an interesting little case study because you can basically teach about a bunch of different types of governments in world history all wrapped up in one unit, because they've had it all. They had monarchy, they had oligarchy, they had tyranny, and of course they had democracy. And even there's the layered comparison of direct democracy that the Greeks had versus the representative version that we have in the United States and many other countries around the world today. So what we typically do there is kind of like a simulation based activity. And so you kind of go through each of the different governments one at a time, and you teach the students obviously what the type of government is. They fill it out on a little graphic organizer, and then you have them simulate the different types of government. So for a monarchy, you choose someone to be the king or the queen of the class. They get to make 5. We use school rules to try to keep it relevant. And they get to make whatever 5 rules they want. And probably there's going to be a lot of kids in the class who are going to be a little bit ticked off about the rules that they make, such as a monarchy, when one person has all the power. And then afterward, you would debrief what are the pros and cons of that experience. What is really effective about having a monarchy? Well, maybe just that one person can make quick decisions. You don't have to be waiting for a bunch of people to debate. The con is obviously that one person is maybe unfit to rule, or maybe is thinking in a way that's very different than what their subjects would like, then the decisions might not work out so well. And then you continue the process with each of the other different types of governments. It's a really cool way for them to see how all of them evolve, how government evolved in Greece in general, but even beyond that, how different types of governments just throughout world history differ from one another, and why each of them have existed, what is good about them, what is not good about them.
And I think having the students actually act this out in the sense that they are creating laws in that style of government helps that concept become more clear to them than if they were just reading about it. And I know it was really cool. We had recently got a review on that resource on Teachers Pay Teachers, and someone, she was saying that the power went to her 6th and 7th grade students' heads right away, and they really enjoyed stepping into that role. And then we're asking to do it again later on. So it does really get the students excited about these types of governments, and then makes it more meaningful to them.
Students love power.
That is true. Give them a chance to talk about school rules and they will be very excited. Related to this, if you're looking for a free resource about government or a good follow-up to this simulation we just talked about, we love SHEG. We'll keep shouting them out. Stanford History Education Group. They have a great one. And the question they ask is, was Athens truly democratic? It is a DBQ style resource. So for instance, they have selections of one of Pericles' speeches. They have a selection or a passage from the Athenian Constitution. So they've got lots of great documents that you can use. with your students and help them analyze these primary sources to come to these conclusions themselves about, hey, wow, only a small percentage of the Athenian population actually can vote and be involved. So it yields some good conversation here, and it's a free resource. Definitely check it out. And also, I should have mentioned before, but you can get all of these resources. We have everything linked below, and there's also a free unit plan that you can also access linked below that has everything as well as how long we spend on these different things, so you can structure your unit that way.
All right, so the next part of our unit, we talked a little earlier about Athens and Sparta briefly, connecting it to geography. At this point, getting into the historical differences between the two civilizations. Athens, for the obvious reasons that they created democracy, and then Sparta is a place that gets a lot of attention just for being so vastly different, being more of a warlike type of culture. So to teach Athens and Sparta, we use, one of the resources we use to kind of introduce it is a quick video from Horrible Histories. Not the biggest fan of everything that they do, but this particular video, it's about 5 minutes long. It does a really good job of showing the differences between Athenian culture and Spartan culture, like in the form of historical wife swaps, what they call it. I can't remember what those were called way back when, like, people would change like families like for a week or whatever.
It was like an old reality show.
Yeah, old reality TV show. And so the kids laugh at little parts of it. It does a nice job of just kind of showing some of the differences between the two cultures.
And with this wife swap video, the video we have linked is a compilation from Horrible Histories, so you would want to start at 8-minute mark for the ancient Greece version.
Yes. There's also a really good comic strip. This was from, I think, McGraw-Hill, if I want to say. This probably came out a while ago, but it has like the two friends. I think it's like Draco and Cylon from like Athens and Sparta, and they're just kind of like sitting around and talking about the differences between Athens and Sparta, like the homes that they have, the activities they grew up participating in. Again, obviously it's catered and meant for middle schoolers. That gives a really good idea of just the main cultural differences between the two different groups in Greece.
And it's called Peloponnesian Strangers.
Totally forgot to say
and
that. Yes.
With that, it's one of those things like we've mentioned in some of our past videos. It's specifically with the McGraw-Hill textbook. We cannot post that ourselves because that would break terms of use. But if you search Peloponnesian Strangers comic, you should be able to find a PDF of it somewhere.
Yeah, or there's even, I think, a couple of YouTube videos where someone like narrated through it.
That's
also
right.
As
Yeah,
well.
a teacher. Yeah,
I do not know the name off the top of my head, but
we'll find, if we find it, we'll link it.
Yes, very, very good stuff.
And just to keep the fun with Athens and Sparta going, more options. One of my favorite activities that I actually modeled after one of my favorite Civil War activities is my Athens and Sparta statistics sorting activity, where students are presented with a variety of statistics about either Athens or Sparta shuffled up, and they all fit into different categories, and students have to figure out which ones belong with which location. It's just one of those opportunities where students can make predictions and guess and get kind of invested in maybe a competitive activity to start identifying some differences between them. So you could use this to introduce things. You could use it more as review after you've covered it, either from looking over the textbook or watching the video we described or the comic we described, any of those sorts of things. But we find it helpful, and then afterwards you can go over the differences with your students and talk through the different categories and how do these differences affect the way of life in these two city-states. A very interactive and tons of fun resource is our rap battle, and this is probably the best culmination activity for Athens and Sparta after you've had a chance to help inform your students about it. Or even if you don't want to do some of the other activities, there are reading passages in that resource, so your students can have a full reading passage on Athens, a full reading passage on Sparta, and then they have the chance to put their creativity to the test and start preparing either a rap or a song or poem. I find it's helpful to share that they don't have to sing, they don't have to rap, just make a poem, but it gives students a chance to shine, to let their creativity, influence their work. And I know that whenever I did like a rap battle in my teaching, it was always one of the best days. And it's a great way for students to identify those comparisons in an alternative and creative form. So highly recommend that as well.
You can't really do a Greece unit without getting into this a little bit into Greek mythology. Now, obviously, because it's mythology, the amount of time that you spend on this, it really is just going to depend from teacher to teacher and what your preferences are. What we really do is at least just introduce them to the major Greek gods and goddesses. There's obviously a lot of them out there. It's just kind of like apps. There's an app for that. There's a god for that, like in ancient Greece. But in any case, the first thing that we usually do is a little slideshow introducing the Olympians. So we're talking like your Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, and all those guys. Hades is technically not Olympian. We throw him in there too, throw him a bone. But in any case, we just kind of introduce who they are through that way. There is a Greek god rap YouTube video out there. We're going to have obviously linked in the resource. It's a little cheesy, but I have to give them a lot of credit because it does a good job of like teaching you about each of the different gods, reinforcing it, and they have a little bit of fun with it. Like the costumes, the animations are just kind of funny. And the song is pretty catchy too once you listen to it. If you want to take your Greek mythology section further, TED Ed has some wonderful videos on some of the different myths. Definitely make sure that you watch them ahead of time though, and kind of like depending on like the age of the kids that you're teaching. Obviously with Greek mythology, we always have to say that because there's a lot out there that is maybe not always appropriate for middle schoolers. Probably get the picture. But there's two really good ones that I've used with my students, the myth of Prometheus and then the myth of Pandora's box that they did that are both really, really good. The kids like watching them.
You did ed puzzles with them, right?
Yeah, you can make them even into ed puzzles, or you can find, we've got an ed puzzle out there, there's people's ed puzzles out there, but just to kind of like use as a formative assessment to make sure that they're understanding the video. Ed puzzles are a really cool tool if you've never heard of it, that especially a lot with remote teaching this year, I think has gained quite a bit of popularity, where you can embed questions. You can also like put in audio recordings of yourself, like going over something like midway through a video. It's a really just neat resource in of itself, but just another option if you're wanting to expand on that Greek mythology stuff.
And if you're looking for specific activities to help review your coverage of Greek gods or goddesses, we do have a fun Instagram activity. The kids get really into this. They're taking several of the different gods and goddesses and creating a very short section of an Instagram profile. So identifying some different photos that they would have, writing captions for them. And it's both great review, but also pretty humorous and pretty fun to grade. So with that, we really enjoyed that. And then also we talk every one of these videos, we always try to share some easy, low prep, early finisher activities or emergency subplan activities. And we do have one for Greek mythology, specifically where there are lots of mystery lockers. So we gave a locker to each of these different gods or goddesses, and students have to examine the objects inside the locker and figure out who they belong to. And there's other activities on those activity sheets besides that, but it's just a fun, creative way for practice, and they're just really simple printables that are easy to have on hand. So when students finish something way quicker than you expected, they're not just sitting there wondering what they do. You've got something ready for them to work on.
Yes, yes, yes. Speaking of easy things to do if you are out for a sick day or whatever the case might be, Percy Jackson, still kind of a big deal with some students out there. There's I've shown a couple years the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief movie, usually to like wrap up like the Greece unit, kind of like Sarah was talking about earlier. If you're unsure of what to do.
Right before spring break,
right,
maybe?
Yeah, maybe like right before spring break coming around the corner.
You can tell it's starting to be the end of the year because we're like, yeah, throw in a movie.
Just be sure that you can handle watching it however many times over. But no, that's something fun that the kids do enjoy. Getting closer to wrapping this thing up, there's a lot of stuff you can obviously talk about with Greece. One thing that I usually get into with my students is bringing up Alexander the Great and the Macedonians. Speaking of which, there's a really good DBQ resource in the DBQ project out there that questions whether Alexander is even deserving of the great title. because that's something I think really important with history, because there's several people who are given the title the Great, but what actually makes a person great, and does that sort of title like hold up, and whose perspective is that really based on? So that particular resource is really good. They provide a bunch of interesting, they show like the map of how many places that Alexander conquered, how many places he named after himself. One after his horse too, Bucephalus, so it wasn't just about him. But they get into like different statistics about like how his conquering parts of 3 different continents, like how that affected the different people and places and cultures of the areas that he went to, like hundreds of years after his time. Some other like legends and stories about him in terms of like what make him sound like an awesome guy, and some that make him sound like an actually really, really ruthless, not so awesome guy. Just good primary and secondary source analysis activity. You can do the written portion at the end if you want, or you could do some other kind of activity if you wanted to reinforce the knowledge, or just simply do the documents and have them answer the questions. It's really flexible, whatever it is that you want to do with it.
Absolutely. And maybe you don't wish to use another DBQ. We also include Alexander the Great in our resumes of these different leaders of ancient Greece and Macedonia. And with this, this particular version includes Pericles, Socrates, Aristotle, and Alexander the Great, all different types of people who accomplished great things. But we do love the job fair concept. Again, I know I say this every time, but it's a way to promote job skills with your students while also having a deeper understanding of the people that we have resumes for. So when we look, and I mean, when you made that Alexander the Great resume, I mean, that was a ton of research, and he did so much. That's our only 2-page resume so far.
Sorry, you're welcome. Yes.
So much detail.
Fascinating guy.
I mean, absolutely. And he accomplished all that in such a short time, you know. But anyway, the students get really into it, and it's cool to see. You were just actually grading some earlier today. It's cool to see how the students make connections between different jobs and then different characteristics or accomplishments that these individual leaders have, and be able to put those together.
And again, playing into students loving having power. So power to hire. Can I add something?
Absolutely.
One other resource that you mentioning the philosophers, again, not trying to promote horrible histories, but there's a second video I'm thinking about them. We're the Thinkers. It's a video that has got, basically it's a parody off of the Monkees, like Hey Hey We're the Monkees, if you know that, the band from the 1960s. They've got Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and Diogenes in there, and they sing like to that tune of that song. I don't know. It always makes me laugh. So if you're going to be doing the resume activity, since you got several of them that are going to be in there, have a little fun.
And to kind of go along with that, we have an activity sheet, one of those easy no prep sheets where students are matching up the accomplishments of the mathematicians and thinkers and writers and more, anyone who really added to, this golden age of Athens. So that is also linked below for you as well. And of course, if you think, all this sounds great, make sure you've downloaded our free unit plan, again, linked below, or consider checking out our Ancient Greece bundle, which has all of our resources at a discounted rate, so you are ready to use them in your classroom. Let us know any questions you have in the comments below, and check out some of our other Ancient Civ tutorials about how we teach them. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.